Alright, so today's lesson on 6.2 is quick because, pretty much all we're doing is stepping forward a little bit. Yesterday I told you that I took all the negatives out of your situation and the problem. I also made sure that there was nothing really major in terms of you substituting, but there's three differences today, and this actually opens up the door for everything that I can give you tomorrow. Tomorrow there's no lesson, you'll just get a bunch of practice. We'll also work on the formal version of putting that answer in, but the differences are that you sometimes might have to substitute for x instead of y, so we'll see some of those today. You might also have to distribute a value to the parentheses, and you might also have to distribute a negative. So this right here, combined with what you learned yesterday, should pretty much complete your level of substitution. So if you've been up to speed on everything and you're up to speed after this, then you really have nothing to worry about in terms of substitution. Again, quick review on yesterday. We learned that we could take whatever equation we want as long as we see a variable by itself, and so we're picking this one even though we could have picked that one as we did yesterday. So we're going to take this x plus 12 and substitute it for y in this part here, turning this into x plus 12 because that's what goes in for y equals 3x. And what I told you yesterday is that this is all the substitution that you have to do. The majority of the rest of this problem is just algebra. Substitution is not a 20-step process. It's just taking this two equation system and turning it into one problem. So then 12 comes down with 2x, dividing by 2. You get your 6 equals x. You get your answer and you're done. Oh, sorry, not done. Knowing that there are two problems, now you go back and you copy down one of the original problems. So y equals 3x. Now that you know that x is 6, it means you can now turn your x into 6, getting your second answer of 18. So again, I told you yesterday you could check that out and you can do this in your head. 3 times 6 is 18, and 6 plus 12 is also 18, so you know you got it right. The recommendation yesterday was that you practice checking your answer, because the better you get at checking your answer, the more you'll be able to actually do standardized test questions without having to do a bunch of work. The second type of question we did yesterday had this. Again, we're looking for a y by itself. This y is not by itself, but this one is. So what we're going to do is substitute for this y and put it here. Again, just the y in that problem. And again, what I said yesterday is in this problem you have to write everything in front of the box, so 9x plus, then trade your y for x minus 3, and then write everything behind the box, which is your 77. I discussed yesterday that you need to write it without the parentheses because it's a good habit for later, and we'll see why in just a little bit at the end of this lesson. So you bring down your x minus 3 and your 77. You then put your 9x and x together to get 10x minus 3 equals 77. And from there, again, you do your algebra again. 10x equals 88. 80. You divide by 10 to get x is 8. And again, go back to one of your equations. I told you it doesn't matter which one you pick. Just to show you, I'm going to go ahead and pick this one. I'm going to use the hard one. So 9x plus y equals 77. So 9 times 8 plus y equals 77. That would make 72 plus y equals 77, which when you subtract 72, you get y equals 5. So since we use that for the answer, plug it into the other one. If you put in 8 minus 3, notice you get 5, so we know we got it right on this as well. So again, it doesn't matter which equation you pick for the second part, just as long as you use sound practices. Again, the only parts where you use substitution is on this step and this step. Sorry, I had to practice writing my stars. But this step here is where you're taking the two systems into one, and this step here is where you're taking the 8 and plugging it back into something else. All the rest of this problem is algebra. As long as you know that, you should be okay. Again, as long as you've been solid on your algebra, you should be okay. Now this gets into our new stuff here. We've got 3 new types of questions. Again, I'm not giving you everything that's out there, and you don't have negative answers yet, but this is just, again, something to kind of give you confidence so that you'll know what's going on before we end the semester. In this problem, the only variable is by itself, happens to be an x, but it doesn't matter. You can still substitute for x. In this case, x is y plus 1. Now where you want to be careful is that a lot of people who see this still accidentally do that, but you have to put whatever's in this box into that box, which means everything in front of the box here is just a 5. X then turns into y plus 1, and then you rewrite the rest, so plus y equals 23. Now that there's a number outside, again, this is algebra, not substitution, you simply do 5y plus 5, and then rewrite everything else, plus y equals 23. You then combine your terms, 5y and y makes 6y plus 5 equals 23. And again, algebra steps all the way through to your answer. And that would be your first part. As I told you, substituting back, in substitution the easiest one to plug in for is the one you use for the 2 boxes, and so I'm going to put in the x equals y plus 1. Now that I know y is 3, it's x equals 3 plus 1, or x equals 4. And again, the more you practice it, here's what you do. 5 times 4, 20. That's what I usually do. And then 3, and then I can look and say 20 plus 3 is 23, and that works just fine. As I said, this is not the standard form that you're going to put in your answers. We'll talk about that again tomorrow as you're working on your other stuff, but this is it. I mean, there's really nothing else major about it. It's just got to be something that you approach with the right mind frame and that you actually try to get practice on, because as I said, you're going to get a lot of time to forget this, and it's a very important topic. The difference between this one, yes, I'm still substituting for this y, but now notice that my y is not just a regular y, it's actually got a 9 attached to it. So this time when I do everything in front of the box, it's 4x plus 9, then 4x minus 2, and then 62, which is going to get ugly, but again, that's really not as bad as what it seems, because all you have to do is just follow the steps of the problem. So you got your 4x plus 36x minus 18 equals 62. You put these two things together, you get 40x minus 18 equals 62. Add your 18, you get 40x equals 80. You divide by 40, and again, just following the numbers and not doing any real tough work, you eventually get down to the answer. Just don't start to think that all of this is substitution. Substitution, again, is just plugging in the number. Algebra is finding the answer. And again, the easiest one to plug in for is the one we use the 2 boxes on. So y equals 4x minus 2. Y equals 4 times 2 minus 2, which is 8 minus 2, or 6. Checking that out, putting a 2 here, 4 times 2 makes 8. 9 times 6 makes 54. 8 plus 54 is 62. So we know we got that right. So again, if you want to check to make sure you got it, all you have to do is literally just take the x, plug it in, see what you get, take the y, plug it in, see what you get, and make sure that everything is true. The reason we don't have to plug this in is because that's what we used, although you could say 2. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 2 is 6. The very last and most tricky one, well, not most tricky one, because there's also ones where you have a number outside the negative, but the negative causes issues more than anything else, and you need to make sure you're always careful whenever you see negatives attached to variables anyway. But in this case, we do have a regular y and a regular y, well, almost regular. What's in front of the box is 9x minus, then parentheses, x plus 3, then 21. Every year that I teach this, I have students, and until I have the computer program, but I have students who simply, every time they plug it into here, they don't put parentheses, and they end up putting the wrong thing. And what I mean by that is they put 9x minus x plus 3 equals 21. Now don't write that, but that's what they substitute, because they have the bad habit of just putting 9x minus x plus 3 equals 21. But what you have to remember is that the negative doesn't just switch the x. it also switches to 3. And that is the issue right there. So that is why you want to make sure you use your parentheses, and that is why you want to make sure you distribute the parentheses, because even though on the first one that we saw, where is it? Here. Even though on this one nothing happens, if you don't practice the habit of at least putting the parentheses and then distributing the parentheses, then when you get to this one right here, you're going to miss it every single time because there's no way to get it right. But other than that, now you put your like terms together. In this case, 9x minus x is 8x minus 3 equals 21. Add your 3 to both sides. And again, once you substitute appropriately, everything else falls right into place. From there, take that 3, plug it into one of those two options, and everything is good. 9 times 3 is 27. 6 goes here. 27 minus 6 is 21. So we know we're okay. Whenever you take a quiz on substitution, you can always check your answer to make sure it's good. And again, the other thing is, whenever you're taking a multiple choice question on substitution, it might be easier if you're doing a multiple choice just to go ahead and do a real quick check. For example, if you were checking that one, that would be, actually I picked the wrong one, that would be something like 54 minus 3, which you know isn't it. This would be something like 27 minus 11, which you know isn't it. This would be something like 99 minus 3, which you know isn't it. And you can actually use the answers, plug in your x, because remember that's x comma y, but you can plug in your x, plug in your y, and just check to see if it gets you the right answer. And in most tests, these answers don't even come close to what they're supposed to do. So again, if you're taking like a standardized version where the answers are both in front of you, that works. And then one more thing before I close it up. One of the things you might be asked is, it'll say, if this is your system, then find x plus y. And so all you have to do there, once you finish the system, is say x plus y is 3 plus 6, which is 9. So again, we'll get into all that tomorrow. We'll see those problems and start working on them. But other than that, go ahead and get to your Math Excel and let's get some practice. Again, you want to make sure you get this down today, because today would represent, if you can understand the things from today, then you know you understand it all. So work hard, use each other, use me, and let's get this done.